The stratosphere is suddenly warming up, but I wouldn't get too excited about it if you're after snowfall. We are going to see the UK getting a little warmer this week before potentially some heavy rain across the south this weekend. I've got an impressive dangler to show you, and somewhere in the world may see a metre of rainfall this week. It's all in this week's Met Office Deep Dive. Welcome along. My name is Alex Deakin. I'm a meteorologist here at Met Office HQ. We do this every Tuesday. We look at 1, 2, 3 elements of the weather and try and dig a little bit deeper. So for the next 20 to 30 minutes, that's what we'll be doing. But we also love reading your comments, so please put them in the chat. Any suggestions for other topics that we might like to cover, please do put them in there. Hit the thumbs up button as well. And if you haven't already subscribed, then please do so and share the love. Let other people know that we talk about the weather every Tuesday in great detail here on the Met Office YouTube channel. Thank you very much for being there. As I said, welcome along. We will start way up in the sky in the stratosphere where, some funky things are happening. Let's take a look, first of all, at the temperature. Way up in the sky, 30 hectopascals, so what's that, mid-20,000s of meters, about 22, 25 kilometers up in the sky, so way up above the North Pole. This is data from the JMA, the Japanese Meteorological Agency, and it is showing the temperature, the current temperature way up in the sky. This is the average as we go through the year. So the temperature above the North Pole tends to dip as we go through autumn and into the winter months before steadily rising as the Earth tilts back towards the sun and northern hemisphere, and we see those temperatures rising through the summer. This is the average temperature. This is what is happening this year right now, and you can see, boom, in the past couple of days, temperatures have really started to rocket, say, way up in the sky, way up in the stratosphere above the North Pole, and that is stratospheric warming, and it's happening suddenly. Sudden stratospheric warming. But that's only one part of the equation. That's the temperature, yes, but really we're more interested in what the winds are doing. High up in the sky at the same levels or a bit above, this is a 10 hectopascal, so close to 30 kilometers up in the sky. This graph from the ECMWF is showing us what the winds are doing. Now, usually at this time of year, as we go into the winter months, the polar vortex sets up high in the stratosphere. It's kind of a donut of winds. They go in a westerly direction. They set up every year. This year, though, it has been a little bit weaker than normal. The polar vortex has been a little bit weaker, and recently it's got even weaker still. This is the average wind speed, winds in meters per second. This red line is the average wind speeds, and the blue is where we're at the moment, and these lines going forward in time, well, they're the projections from the different ensemble members from the different computer model runs going forward. And this is where we're at the moment, so close to zero. Now, for a full-on SSW, the winds need to reverse. So we've got these westerly winds going round and round, normally pretty fast, can be 150 miles an hour, but every now and then they do tend to weaken, and that's what they've done. So they're close to zero at the moment. If they go negative, that means the winds have gone easterly, and that's when you've got a full-on SSW. They haven't got there yet, and they may not get there. They're expected to stay pretty weak, maybe dipping back close to freezing over the next week or so. But the polar vortex has definitely had a wobble. It's definitely weakened, which is why we're seeing those temperatures shooting up high in the sky. What does that mean? Why is it relevant? Well, what happens with the polar vortex, if it stays strong all the way through the winter months and keeps spiraling around, then that helps to keep the winds lower down, going in a westerly direction quite rapidly. So it kind of keeps the jet stream going. Filters, not the same levels, the jet stream's way lower, but what happens is if you've got a strong polar vortex all the way through the winter months, that tends to keep the jet stream flowing westerly, and that keeps our weather more mixed and generally in from the Atlantic. But when the polar vortex weakens, what can happen is that can ripple down through the atmosphere, usually takes a couple of weeks, and that can then let the jet stream weaken, or perhaps even also change direction, going from more easterly, or just breaking down, and that can allow more blocking weather patterns, which can in turn allow us things to turn a bit colder. So that's why people in the winter, particularly people who love snow, get a bit excited when they see things like this, because it can, but it doesn't always mean that the UK gets colder spells of weather. What are we seeing at the moment? Well, this is very early in the season for us to be seeing a sudden stratospheric warming. I think the earliest on record was late November back in '68 or something like that. Well, we haven't got records going back ages and ages, because this is a relatively new phenomenon of recent decades, but this would be close to a record-breaking early SSW. Now, it doesn't look like it's going to be a major one because the wind's not likely to flip, but a minor SSW is occurring. What does that mean for us at the surface? Well, not a great deal at the moment. Let's put some other charts up. Now, this is the wind field. We're going up through the sky here, so pressure is dropping here, so we're going up through the atmosphere here. Now, this is the wind anomaly, so the change from the average through the sky. Now, blue isn't cold, it is actually more, so it's less, the winds are less than average here. Anything down to those dark blues being the strongest. So this is a standard zonal mean, zonal wind anomaly. So this would be higher than average. The yellows up to the reds, lower than average winds. Now, the average wind with that polar vortex going would be strong westerlies, but this is showing much lower than that. So we've dropped those winds. So that's what you'd expect. That ties in with what we've observed with those winds, and we'd expect that that dark blue color to be here. But what would happen, or what can happen, is that ripple down effect through the atmosphere that weakens the winds lower down as well. There is a sign of that as we go forward in time through here, but it's not a particularly strong sign. Now, I'm going to take you back 5 days to what the computers were looking at then, or suggesting, and it's all shifted a little bit because we were 5 days earlier. So this is where we're kind of at now, and there's a stronger signal. 5 days ago, there was a stronger signal for that reversal, or that reduction of the winds to come down through the atmosphere and potentially be much closer to the surface. And so that would increase the chances of us getting slacker winds, slacker jet stream, increasing the chances of blocking and potentially some colder weather. That was a stronger signal, much more blue on the chart there. Let's go back to where we are now, the more recent runs. So what we're seeing is the models cooling off on the idea of blocking weather patterns and actually keeping more likely to keep things more mobile, winds more average. So average winds would mean coming in from the west. So we've seen the models over recent days. Yes, we've got the SSW, but that doesn't always transpose into us getting colder conditions. It's about 70% of the time when you see a major SSW, that can lead to a colder spell, and it's always kind of a couple of weeks lag at least. And as we've seen, the models are not as keen now as they were 4 or 5 days ago. Now, this is all complex. It's always very complex, but there's an extra complication added in because it's been so early in the season. That can, the models haven't got as much evidence to go on as well. So that can confuse the computer models a little bit as well. If we go back to this chart here showing the projection of the winds, that's the temperature. But if we show the projection of the winds going forward, you can see that actually most of them try and re-establish those winds as we go through the rest of December. But that could be in part because they're not used to the winds dropping off so rapidly, because this is such an exceptional start. So the future progress, always take that with a bit more of a pinch of salt when the starting conditions are so anomalous, are so strange, are so unusual, so different. So yes, we are seeing a strengthening of that, but even though some of them, as you'd expect, you get a very noisy signal 4 or 5 weeks ahead of time. But there is that stronger signal that it's going to get closer to average, but it never really gets back up to the average even then. So it could be that through the winter, the polar vortex does remain on the weaker side. And it certainly started off fairly weak. So it's definitely something we'll be keeping a close eye on. As I said, at the moment, there's no strong signal for any colder weather heading for the UK. As we'll see in a moment, we're looking at milder conditions developing later this week, and that's likely to set into next week as well. Now, this is shown this before on the deep dive, and we often show it in the 10-day trend, the probabilistic pressure trend. So we're back to the surface now. What's the pressure doing at the surface? Dates going forward along the top. Blue is low pressure dominating close by to the UK. Red is high pressure dominating close by to the UK. And we're going back in time again here through previous model runs. So if we go back, say to the back end of last week, when there were signs of this SSW happening and people were getting a bit excited that that could potentially lead to something a bit colder into December. And look at here. So 2 weeks ahead of time, just about. I mean, it's a bit shorter than that maybe, but quite a bit of red appearing on the chart here. At that time frame, back end of last week, there was quite a strong signal that through that first weekend in December, blocking weather patterns may exist, which increase the chances of something a little bit colder. It doesn't guarantee it could be blocked with high pressure generating southerly winds, but increased chance certainly. But as we've gone closer to the more recent days, as I say, the models are backtracking from that thinking a little bit. Much more blue on the chart as we head into that second week of December. So much more likely now that we're going to see low pressure continuing to dominate, which means milder and wetter weather as well. And we take a look at even the wider picture now, looking even further ahead. There's that block of blocks, if you like, from the first weekend of December, from the end of last week. Even through the weekends, there were signals of perhaps some higher pressure and blocking with those pinker colours there on the middle part of December. Again, that would be 2 weeks ahead. So yeah, potentially that link to the SSW weakening, but even that signal's now kind of washed away. What about those reds up there? Well, that is a long way ahead. So yeah, the main signal to pick up on is actually, certainly for the first 2 weeks of December, it's looking mobile, looking most likely that we will see low pressure close by or in control of our weather, which means milder and wetter weather generally. With that caveat that the models may not necessarily be handling the SSW that well, because it is so early in the season. So an intriguing one this winter, or start to this winter, certainly something we'll be keeping a close eye on. But at the moment, I wouldn't be banking on getting your sledge out anytime soon. But, you know, watch this space, subscribe, and then we'll be keeping you updated on the very latest. But quite interesting what's going on high in the sky. We often get a lot of questions about the SSW. So that's where we're at the moment. What about in the shorter term? Because that could be quite interesting as well with our weather, particularly as we head into the weekend. What we've got at the moment, as you've probably could tell, is quite a lot of sunshine outside and a few showers draped into eastern areas. We've got a northerly airflow, so the wind's coming down from the north, both at the surface, and the jet stream is kind of rippling and toppling in over the UK as well. So we've got northerly winds high in the sky, where the jet stream is, and northerly winds at the surface also. Let's look at the bigger picture, because that jet stream coming down here is creating a dip, making low pressure and lots of wet weather over Italy. What's going to happen over the next few days is that these weather systems start to move in, the jet stream topples over the UK, and this ridge of high pressure moves in. Going to be a cold one tonight with those clear skies. But then we're seeing weather systems coming in from the Atlantic. The first one bringing wet weather into the west during tomorrow. And then this one getting picked up by the jet stream. Notice here, quite an active jet stream, picking that low up, pushing it up towards Iceland. And if we fast forward that a little bit, it actually turns into quite a powerful little low. And that squeezes the isobars and brings some pretty strong winds to northwest Scotland as we go through Thursday, and more particularly Thursday evening and into Friday. So that's kind of the next major watch point with our weather. What are those winds doing there? The winds high in the sky, but the surface winds too are going to be pretty lively close to that low as it zips between the UK and Iceland, but some strong winds across the northwest of the UK. Before all that though, tucked in here, this is a warm sector, so we've got some warm air on the way. Let's take those winds off and put the temperature on. The temperature profile, about 1,500 meters up. That is showing a nice little warm sector in there, tucked in there. So some warmer air is on the way. Let's take a look at what the temperatures are going to do, because we're going to see quite a contrast later this week. In particular, between 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock Wednesday morning, where we could easily see those temperatures down to freezing, much more widespread frost coming in tonight. Whereas if we fast forward to 24 hours later, just about, temperatures in double figures. So we're going to see a big jump, and this is the temperature contrast from 24 hours earlier. Many places are going to be 9 degrees warmer, if not or not more, 9 degrees at least warmer than 24 hours earlier. So yes, a frost tomorrow morning, and then Thursday morning far from frosty. But of course, as we see that switch and the Atlantic winds coming in, we will see a return to wetter weather also. But that's going to be quite an interesting switch that we see between Wednesday morning and Thursday morning. Then, well, things could get interesting into the weekend. Let's take the jet stream off for now and fast forward and zoom in a little bit. We've got these weather fronts coming through, so bands of showery rain coming in. Look at those isobars closely packed through Friday. Still very windy across northern Scotland. So Thursday night, Friday across northern Scotland, very windy. The isobars more spaced out elsewhere. Then just watch this. Little dip in the isobars. Well, that actually develops into quite a nasty looking little low pressure system heading in towards the southwest of the UK on Saturday. Now, it does look as if this is the Met Office computer model, is maybe over-egging this, intensifying this low a little bit too much. But this low certainly has the potential to bring more heavy rain across the south and also possibly some strong winds, but it does depend on the intensity. I am going to put the jet stream back on now, because how that develops really does depend on how the jet stream picks it up. So the jet stream coming in here, and it gets quite complicated, kind of splits into two around this zone, and it's this little left exit part of this jet streak that picks that up and intensifies it and pushes it as quite a deep area of low pressure into the southwest of the UK. Now, we don't think it's going to be this intense because of the complexities of the jet stream as it picks it up. Other models are not suggesting it's going to be as intense. In fact, there's quite a big spread, quite a big variation in what the other computer models are doing with this area of low pressure, which I can hopefully show you if we look at the ECMWF ensembles. So this is the European model. Let's get to the same time frame. Gone too far. Saturday midday. This is what ECMWF, the European model, has. It's got a low, and it's not too dissimilar position on its control run. So heading in more into northern France and not as intense as the Met Office model. But if we look at the other members, so we run the model many times, that's number one is down here. It's got a well, maybe a slightly more potent low, but it's in a much more southerly position. Where has it gone on number two? Well, there's something weak in the Bay of Biscay, not much happening across the south of the UK at all, so that would be very different. Look at number three. It's got a low heading somewhere across Wales and into northern England. Number four, I think, is even further north. So just taking the first handful of ensembles, you can see quite a spread. Now, there is a consistency. The low pressure's kind of in this zone, but how far north it is, how far south it is, that is quite a range. Now, just looking at individual runs of these ensembles isn't that useful, so we tend to look at probabilities, or we look at the position of the lows and compare them to each other. This is let me show you this first. Actually, this is the Dalmatian plot. So each of these different dots represents where the center of the low is on each of the different ensemble member runs when you run it many times. The top two are from ECMWF, from midnight last night and from midday yesterday, and the Met Office ones for the same time frame on the bottom two here. Now let's zoom into what we were looking at yesterday. Quite hard to see, I appreciate that, but there's the outline of the UK and the European model. It's got more of a cluster down across France. So the European model was favouring those low pressure systems to be down across northern France, which could still bring some heavy rain across southern England, but it does have some across parts of England and Wales. Whereas the Met Office model, the main run, actually had the low exiting Yorkshire, but it does have that cluster down, but it's much more spaced out, so much less consistency there with the Met Office model. But if we go to the more recent run, look at the run from midnight last night, you can see the Met Office run here has that really deep low that we saw down to the southwest. A lot of other ones close by to it in here, but those purple colours, that means the low isn't as intense. So that's why we think our model, that main model run, the deterministic model run, is too deep, is too intense with the low, because a lot of the ensemble runs are nowhere near as intense, but in a similar position. So we're reasonably happy with that position. The European model run now, again, has that cluster, still further south than the Met Office model, but it's a little closer. It's more likely across the channel. So the models are kind of converging. As we get closer to the time, they're getting more consistent as well. So we do think we're going to see low pressure. The most likely scenarios are low pressure somewhere either across the south of England or across the Channel or northern parts of France. There is still a small chance, but it is a small chance, about 10%, that it is like the Met Office model and quite an intense low. But the most likely scenario is that it is a low pressure system, that the winds don't cause too many issues, but of course, because it's been so wet, any amount of rainfall needs to be watched at the moment. So that's the most likely scenario. And if you look at the probabilities, again, this is just from the European model run. When you run it lots of time, you can work out the probability. If you look, number one has a certain amount of rain, number two doesn't. So you can work out the probability across those 100 members. And this is showing the probability of 10 millimetres of rain. So how many of those 100 ensemble members are showing 10 millimetres of rain? So it's not actually showing where it's raining. It's the probability, the chance of 40 to 60% chance in that zone here from the European model of what we call probably heavy rain through the English Channel. I can zoom in a little bit, show that a little bit closer. So that's the main area we're looking at. But this is from the European model, and we think that's still a little further south because our Met Office model is a little bit further north. So the most likely scenario is that it's quite wet through that southern slice of the UK, with the possibility also of some strong winds too. So that's what we're focusing on in the short to medium term as we go through this week. Alex Deakin will have much more on this, no doubt, tomorrow, when we'll have had a couple more iterations. The model said they'll probably converged a little bit. Now, this is 5 days away still, so, you know, we will get more firmed up on it as we get closer to the time. But there is the potential, just showing it at this stage, for some pretty wet weather across parts of the south as we head into the weekend. And of course, as I said, it's been pretty wet recently. So one to watch. Alex Deakin will have much more on that in the Met Office 10-day trend tomorrow. But yeah, some interesting weather coming our way. We're talking about 10 millimetres of rain. I am now going to talk about the potential for a metre of rain in Sri Lanka. Let's take a look at the rainfall patterns around the world. What do we want here? We want that and the rain. We'll take the jet stream off. So let's head over to Sri Lanka, where things are getting very interesting indeed. So where are we? There's Indian subcontinent. Sri Lanka's under here. Let's take the rainfall off just to get your bearings there. Sri Lanka. This is the pressure chart. That's not really that useful at the moment because it's quite a weak circulation that we've got. But we can put the winds on. That'll show it quite nicely. Where we've got the winds coming down from the Bay of Biscay, the northeasterly monsoon winds at this time of year coming down here, meeting the southwesterly winds coming in here. And that is a recipe for winds merging together, as we'll see more of in a second actually. The winds merging together, pushing up, generating clouds, generating precipitation. Quite a lot of precipitation as well. Let's just play through the next few days. Take the pressure off, we don't really need that. But you can see those winds coming up, clashing, circulating around, and just look at that rainfall, keeping going, keeping going, keeping going through Wednesday. Again, I'll just take that off. That is Sri Lanka under there, just to get your bearings. Let's zoom in a little bit, because that rain, there's Colombo's appeared as if by magic. Look at that rain, keeping going, feeding in, got very warm, moist sea. A moist sea, who'd have thought it? Feeding in all that moisture. So this part of the world going to see some very, very heavy rain over the course of Wednesday, Thursday, still going into Friday as well. May well generate into actually a tropical depression. not particularly strong in terms of its wind strength, but because it's slow moving, and you're just feeding in all that moisture day after day after day, you know, the rest of this week, still going into Friday, that is a lot of rain to fall over this part of the world. Now, this time of year, you always get the northeasterly monsoons, you always get some kind of a clash going. So it is the wettest time of year in Sri Lanka. Normally the island gets about 250 to 300 millimetres of rain through November. That's the average, broadly speaking. Compare that to, say, London, which is about 500 millimetres. So about half of London's annual rainfall falls in November in Sri Lanka. So it's a wet time of year for sure, but this is above and beyond that. That is a very soggy spell of rain thanks to this tropical depression. It's still going, look, even into Friday. It's not even until the weekend when it starts to move slowly further north. So we're a little bit concerned about the rain in this part of the world, likely to cause some issues. How much rain are we talking? Well, this is I want to say a big thank you to Nick Silkstone for giving me this chart. By the way, he's on Deputy Chief at the moment. He was looking at this, giving me all this information. So big shout out to Nick. Thank you for that. This is the average rainfall from the three main models that we tend to look at. So the Met Office model, ECMWF, and GFS, the American model, averaging over this part of the world. So this is Sri Lanka. This is the average rainfall until the end of the week, and there's a peak there across that northeastern coast, 478 millimetres. Now, this is averaging over a relatively coarse model, so it's going to miss the extremes. So Nick reckons we could easily see double that. We could easily see 800 millimetres of rain and possibly some spot totals of 1,000 millimetres of rain. What is 1,000 millimetres of rain? Yes, that's right, it's a metre of rain falling through the rest of this week, and 2-3 times the monthly average. If we see that kind of amount of rainfall. Admittedly, it's over the hills, over the high ground where we'll see those totals, but there's a real risk of flooding. Nick was also showing me charts of rivers and the returns and how much we'd like to see 1 in 20 year flooding events on a lot of the rivers across the north of the island. But even further south, there's a 25 to 30% chance of seeing these returns of a 1 in 20 year river flooding event. And this is a part of the world that gets a lot of rainfall. So this is quite unusual. And as I say, it could cause some problems through the rest of this week as those rainfall totals really build up. Again, 478 millimetres. Again, that's not really picking out the extremes. So we could see almost double that in some locations. Just for comparison, London gets about 500 millimetres of rainfall every year. So yeah, quite a lot of rain likely to fall in Sri Lanka from that developing situation there. One more thing I wanted to show you. I did promise you a dangler at the start, and yes, I will show you that now. In fact, I'll show you right at the start of the satellite sequence. Going back to last Thursday, if we zoom in, then coming down here, we have an example, quite a good example, of the Pembrokeshire dangler, where the winds come down from the north and generate showers through the Irish Sea, which hit Pembrokeshire, often go on to hit Cornwall as well, sometimes Devon, the Isles of Scilly. And we saw it last Thursday. Last Thursday, it was very cold air and it was generating a lot of snowfall. So we've seen some fantastic pictures of snow in Pembrokeshire. People have been skiing. 20, 30 centimetres of snow, more in some drifts. So yeah, incredible amounts of snow from the Pembrokeshire dangler. What is the Pembrokeshire dangler? It's a genuine meteorological phenomenon. It should really be called a convergence line, because that's what happens where the air converges. Not dissimilar to what's happening in Sri Lanka. The rainfall totals, though, thankfully, somewhat significantly less. So that was last Thursday, but this is today's weather chart, and it's back. That's what it looks like on a weather chart. So this is the pressure chart from midnight last night. Got the low pressure, the black lines, the isobars, the purple, the occlusion. You've got your warm front, your cold fronts. There's a whole video all explaining about these pressure charts that myself and my colleague Jody made earlier this year, I think it was. We'll pop the link in the description. All about how to read a pressure chart. But yeah, on it, you can see the Pembrokeshire dangler. There's a close-up of it. A convergence line. Looks a bit like a stick because it means The air is coming together, the air is clashing, and it's being forced up, generating precipitation. Let's take a closer look at what's going on. In fact, let's do it on the, let's show you the radar from today. So you can see it quite clearly here. So this was yesterday. Yesterday afternoon we had a circulation, a lot of wet weather, and just bands of showers coming through really. You can almost see it setting up there with the winds coming around low pressure like that. But if we run through the sequence, it's been more in evidence through the day today, and we've got this classic, so you've got the winds coming down from the north. Now they're coming down from the north, they're being heated from beneath, from the warm sea. So the warm sea is pushing up warmer air. It's hitting the colder air, so it just rises, and as it rises, it generates clouds. That's what we're seeing here in the flow coming in. We saw it last week as well across these eastern areas, but specifically here, you've got that line going all the way down. You're not seeing it across Republic of Ireland, seeing a little bit maybe there in North Wales, but it's not as prevalent. That is because the air is coming right down here. You've got to get it in just the right location, so the air is coming right down here, not really hitting any land. Let's put the pen on, see if we can do some drawing. Oh, there's my cheats from earlier. Let's zoom in. So you can see that the wind's coming down here. That's the way the wind is coming down here, generating warmth from beneath, pushing the air up. But what is happening here, as the air comes down across Northern Ireland into the Republic of Ireland, what happens is as the air comes over, as the air is travelling over sea, the sea's relatively smooth. As it comes over land, so use my computer as an example, there's more friction there. So it loses energy, so it slows down a little bit. So as the air is slowed down, what happens is the pressure force takes over, and it actually is forced to move back a little bit. So you get this effect of the wind coming over the land, and actually it's backed, it's turned back on a little bit. So the winds coming down here are coming like this. The winds coming down here just straight over the sea, they're still coming down from the north. So what you've got, where these two are meeting, you've got a clash. You've got those winds pushing together. You've got the winds coming straight down over the sea, and then over Ireland, they're getting a little bit of a tweak because they're slowed down the frictional forces. They're being pushed together. That is the convergence. Where can they go? They can't go down because the sea's there. They can only go up, which is generating the clouds and generating that really nice little streamer is another word for it as well. So that's coming down right through there. And one more thing to show you on that. High resolution satellite picture from today. This is from Zoom Earth, pictures from UMETSAT. You can see it quite clearly there. So it starts off with the air coming in, but you can also see these little feeders, these little streamers starting to come in. You can almost see the lines coming together, and that clashing of those start off as just cumulus clouds bubbling up a little bit, and then they get more and more, and they get more energy as they get more forced together, they get more pushed up, and they generate the showers. Now at the moment they're of rain because we've turned a lot milder, but last week that is what generated the snow across Pembrokeshire. It's typical at this time of year. That's when you get it most because you've got the colder air, the air coming down from the north is getting very cold, and the sea's still really quite warm. So you get that contrast between the warmth at the surface and the colder air aloft, forcing it up along with the physical forcing of those winds pushing everything together. So it's a convergence line, but also known as the Pembrokeshire dangler. Some people call that the Cornish tickler. So, you know, take your pick. But these names genuinely have some meteorology behind them. Right, that is pretty much it from me for today. Thank you very much for joining me for this Met Office deep dive. Hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments if you did, and also let us know in the comments. If you've got any questions, we try and take some of the questions from the Met Office deep dive and answer them in the Weather Studio live on Friday. Don't miss that, 12:15, the Met Office live every Friday. Do hit the thumbs up button, please. It does give us license to do more of these if we know that people like them, and it spreads the word. You can share the love as well, and if you haven't already hit subscribe, then do that as well. That's it from me. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed it too, and I'll see you again soon.